consensus is wrong. The public is being conditioned to watch the skies for missiles, for the kinetic launch. This is a fatal diversion. The next war's opening. Salvo will not be a fireball. It will be silence. The primary attack vector is not nuclear, but informational. According to RUSI threat models, the severing of a few key undersea fiber optic cables or the targeted blinding of GPS and commercial imaging satellites is a low-cost, high-leverage operation. The objective is not physical destruction. The objective is to erase the ledger, to induce a systemic data blackout, paralyzing everything from SWIFT transfers to market-clearing functions. This protocol is designed to create a blind Leviathan, a conventionally superior military and economic power suddenly stripped of its nervous system. A state that cannot see its assets, cannot track its currency, and cannot clear its own debt is functionally insolvent. Its naval fleets and F-35s are liabilities, not assets, if they cannot verify their own supply chains or receive authenticated orders. A healthy system might absorb the shock. Ours cannot. With systemic liabilities, from intractable housing unaffordability to cascading corporate bankruptcies, the financial system operates on zero margin for error. The data blackout is not the cause of the crisis. It is the designated accelerant. It triggers a solvency cascade that was already a mathematical certainty. The pivot to asymmetric escalation is not a strategy of strength. It is the final, mathematical calculation of a state facing its own solvency crisis. A conventional, protracted war is a cash burn operation, an immense domestic liability. Reports from authorities like CSIS are clear. When an unpopular war drains national reserves and threatens regime stability, the entire warfighting doctrine must change. Weakness forces the pivot. Unable to sustain the kinetic cost of a peer-to-peer conflict, the objective shifts. The new target is not military hardware, it is market stability. The adversary reads our financial data as a battle plan. They saw WTI crude plunge 3%, a loss of 1.86 per barrel, on simple de-escalation remarks. This isn't seen as a signal of peace. It's logged as a quantifiable vulnerability, a direct, predictable leverage point. The protocol is to weaponize that volatility. The goal is to turn a localized energy shock into a systemic solvency event. They don't need to create the crisis, they only need to accelerate it. The Western economy is already a tinderbox of systemic fragility, from the unaffordable housing market creating mass liability to the bankruptcies of over-leveraged corporations. This pre-existing weakness is the true attack surface. This creates the ultimate asymmetric trap, a protocol designed to force a conventionally superior power into an impossible choice. The math is brutal and zero-sum. Option A: absorb the kinetic shock and accept a cascading solvency crisis. Option B: escalate militarily against the provocateur, crossing a threshold that leads directly toward a nuclear exchange. Their weakness has forced their hand. Now, they intend to force ours. The kinetic cost curve has inverted. The math is the entire strategy. According to analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, a modern main battle tank represents a capital asset of approximately $5 million. The first-person view drone that can achieve a mission kill against it costs $500. That is not a simple cost-benefit analysis. It is a 10,000 to 1 leverage ratio against a nation's core defense assets. This is the democratization of violence, the collapse of the barrier to entry for projecting lethal kinetic force. An adversary no longer needs industrial parity. They only need access to commercial markets. The objective is not to win a war of attrition against military hardware. The objective is to use these low-cost kinetic shocks to attack the financial solvency of the system that produces the hardware. It is a vector designed to trigger a cascading liability crisis, forcing a choice between economic collapse or a launch-on-warning escalation that leads directly to the nuclear threshold. The kinetic launch point for this new doctrine is not a missile silo. It is the gray zone. These are nation-states selected for their inherent instability, repurposed by adversaries into proxy laboratories. They provide the perfect operational cover for staging the initial economic shock. The core protocol is to test kinetic to financial transmission vectors. A minor, deniable disruption to energy infrastructure is the classic accelerant. The market's reaction to geopolitical signaling is the proof of concept. When the mere prospect of conflict de-escalation with Iran sent oil prices plunging 3%, it confirmed the blueprint. A real kinetic event would trigger a catastrophic price spike. This manufactured energy crisis is not the objective, it is the trigger. The true target is the systemic leverage inside Western economies, exemplified by the housing affordability crisis. This is a mathematical certainty. The kinetic shock creates an inflation wave, forcing central banks to tighten liquidity, which in turn detonates the over-leveraged corporate and household debt. The result is a forced solvency crisis, a macro-scale replay of what happened to Sachs Global, a sudden financial shock collapsing a debt-laden entity. While Western markets hemorrhage value, capital executes a pre-planned flight to safety. The surge in Mexican mining stocks, driven by a rally in precious metals, is not a coincidence. It is evidence of capital repositioning, profiting from the engineered chaos. Analysts at CSIS and RUSI identify regions like South Africa and even Canada as primary gray zones. Their internal political and economic fractures make them ideal staging grounds for adversaries to test these asymmetric protocols, all while maintaining plausible deniability. This is not domestic unrest. It is the beta test for a full-spectrum economic siege. The core protocol of nuclear deterrence is launch-on warning. This doctrine states that if early warning systems detect an incoming strategic strike, a retaliatory launch is executed before the incoming warheads can impact. The entire system is predicated on one fragile assumption, that the data is real. The protocol has no room for ambiguity. According to strategic analysis from CSIS, this is a legacy protocol from an analog age, designed to counter the 30-minute flight time of an ICBM. The logic was brutal but mathematical. Hesitation meant the total loss of second strike capability. There was no time to confirm impact. Warning equals launch. This is not a choice. It is a pre-authorized, systemic response. This creates the fog of digital war. A sophisticated cyber attack does not need to destroy a single radar installation. It only needs to blind it, or worse, inject false data simulating a massive launch. For the commander, the screen is either black or filled with phantom threats. The kinetic cost for the adversary is zero. The potential cost for the defender is a solvency crisis at the species level. They are forced to execute the launch-on-warning protocol based on compromised data, escalating a digital intrusion into a nuclear exchange. The primary attack vector is no longer the missile silo. It is the data feed that controls it. The calibration shot is the next phase. CSIS and RUSI models anticipate a high-probability event within the next 12 months. A coordinated, attribution-impossible disruption of a key North American LNG export terminal. This is not a declaration of war. It is a mathematical test of the asymmetric escalation protocol. The kinetic cost is low, a localized EMP, a compromised SCADA system, a cut subsea cable. The strategic objective is to observe the financial blast radius. As demonstrated by market reactions to mere rhetoric about Iran, a physical supply shock, even a temporary one, is a systemic accelerant. The goal is to precisely measure the speed at which an energy price spike triggers a solvency cascade through the West's debt-leveraged corporate sector, turning a regional disruption into a global liquidity crisis. This is a launch-on-warning scenario for the financial system. They are not testing our military response. They are calibrating the kill chain for our economy.